Later this year, Apple is widely expected to show off a trio of new iPhones with LiDAR sensors and superfast chipsets and sleek designs, perhaps inspired by the iPad Pros. They'll probably be great, but despite all of that, the iPhone SE might be the most important phone Apple releases all year. Now, I'll be honest, this iPhone is not for me. My eyes are pretty lousy, so I prefer bigger screens, and I also have fat thumbs, so typing on this thing can get pretty tricky. Maybe some of that sounds familiar to you, and if it does, the iPhone SE might not be right for you either. What's more important though is that it's going to be just right for a lot of people. We probably all know someone clinging to an older phone because the new ones are just too big. And there's also no shortage of people who just don't get worked up over new phones the way we do at Engadget. They just want something affordable and powerful enough to last them a while. For those people, and for many others, the iPhone SE is the right phone at the right time. But let's back up a bit first. If you've heard anything about the iPhone SE, it's probably some combination of these bullet points. It's cheap, it's small, and it's powerful. Let's go through these in order. The base iPhone SE with 64 gigs of storage costs $399, which means it is priced to move. If you need more storage, that's totally fair. The upgrade to 128 gigs will cost you an extra $50, or you could splurge on the maxed out model with 256 gigs of storage for $549. If this is roughly how much you're willing to spend on a smartphone and you're open to Android as well as iOS, there are plenty of great options out there. Samsung's Galaxy A71, the OnePlus 7T, the Motorola One Hyper. I could run through this list all day. Just keep one thing in mind. Hardly any of those $400 to $500 smartphones use the highest end chipsets available. The iPhone SE does. The iPhone SE is also small, but everyone saw that coming. Like the original iPhone SE before it, this new model packs modern components like the A13 Bionic chipset, better wireless antennas, and more, basically into the body of the iPhone 8. We'll get to how well the iPhone SE performs in just a bit, but I want to spend a little time digging into this design. Personally, I find it a little dated. Since the last time we got a new iPhone SE, mid-range Android smartphones like the ones I just talked about have adopted edge-to-edge displays, and they've sprouted multiple rear cameras. The iPhone SE is, by comparison, pretty basic. All right, fine. It looks like a phone from 3 years ago because it uses the body of a 3-year-old phone. Just look for a moment at these bezels. Remember those Android phones I was just talking about? The ones that cost roughly the same as this iPhone? Every single one of them looks better. Looks aren't everything though, and the iPhone SE still has a lot going for it in this familiar package. The home button is back, and it definitely takes a little getting used to if you've been using all-screen phones for a while, but let me just say, I forgot how good Apple's Touch ID sensors are. Setting this thing up was a breeze, it works really quickly, and most importantly, and I guess perhaps sadly also, it still lets you unlock the phone while you're wearing a mask. It's also rated IP67 for water and dust resistance, so it'll survive a dip into the shallow end of your pool for up to 30 minutes. And I should point out that Apple's also made some important additions under the hood. Beyond obvious stuff like the chipset choice, the iPhone SE supports dual SIM via an eSIM, which makes it a great option for traveling. There's also support for Wi-Fi 6 here, which is great if you've already invested in a Wi-Fi 6 router. There aren't many of you, I'm sure, but everyone else will catch up to you eventually. And then there is the screen, a 4.7-inch Retina display that runs at 1334 by 750. It's exactly the same screen we got a few years ago, and there's nothing wrong with that. In my experience, it's still plenty bright compared to the iPhone 11, and colors look surprisingly good here because the iPhone 8 does support a wide color gamut. And even though this screen runs at a lower resolution than any other smartphone Apple makes, its smaller display size means you're looking at as many pixels per inch as on an iPhone 11. In other words, you're probably not going to see individual pixels unless you smash your nose right into the glass. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm in love with the screen or anything, but it is perfectly nice for what it is. The only real question is whether it's big enough for you, and I can't really help you with that. I find it too small, personally, as I've said. I will say, though, that there are some advantages with Apple's choice of screen that I didn't really expect going into this. For one, if it breaks, you'll spend a lot less trying to repair it than you would on a high-end iPhone. Apple is going to charge $129 for iPhone SE screen replacements, which is $20 less than the same procedure would cost for an iPhone 8, which is kind of ridiculous, and $70 less than replacing the screen on an iPhone 11. If you'd rather dodge the Genius Bar entirely and take it to a third-party repair shop, or just try and fix it yourself, I guess, replacement parts will also likely cost you less than they would for a more powerful iPhone. It's really easy to get hung up on how little you'll spend on an iPhone SE, but I think it's also important to know that it won't cost you a ton of money to keep it running if something does go wrong. And because the iPhone SE uses Apple's A13 Bionic chipset, the very same chipset that you will find in the company's most expensive smartphones, you will not be wanting for power. If anything, squeezing this processor package into a $400 phone feels like the best kind of overkill. The iPhone SE will outgun every other smartphone in this price range. If you want more detail about the architecture or how it splits loads between its different processor cores, please check out our other iPhone reviews. This kind of isn't the place for that. All anyone really needs to know is that the iPhone SE can handle damn near anything. I have been playing graphically intense games, I have been jumping between apps like a crazy person, I have been rendering 4K videos just for fun. Basically, I've been trying to do everything I could to throw this thing for a loop, and this little guy does not quit. And more importantly, neither does its battery. I've been testing this thing for a couple days now, and even after long stretches of use, I've still generally gotten 11 or 12 hours of use from a single charge. That's not amazing, but for a small phone like this, it's kind of to be expected. Going into this, the camera was the only real question mark. Apple eventually confirmed to us that it isn't using the same 12 megapixel sensor as the iPhone 11, but it wouldn't elaborate any further. What we do know is that this single main camera has an f1.8 aperture, a 6-element lens, and optical image stabilization. It's honestly pretty great. I am just as surprised as you are. I've been testing the iPhone SE against the iPhone 11 and my favorite Android phone of all time, Google's Pixel 3a XL. Going into this, I was sure I would prefer the Pixel's photos, but the photos I shot with the iPhone SE frequently had warmer, more appealing colors and less noise overall. Most of the time, I couldn't tell the difference between the photos the iPhone SE took and the photos the iPhone 11 took, which I guess is because the processing that's happening with the A13 chipset is similar, if not identical, between the two phones. Every once in a while, I would notice a few fine details in a picture I shot with the iPhone 11 that weren't quite as distinct in a photo I shot with the iPhone SE. Just check out the star button and the ribbing on this analog stick. Still, the fact that I have to sit here and scrutinize these photos to make out the difference kind of says it all. The iPhone SE's main camera punches way above its weight. The 7 megapixel front-facing camera produces some decent looking selfies too, and you can use either that or the iPhone SE's main camera to shoot handsome bokeh-filled portraits. I should point out you'll also get every single portrait mode option, which you couldn't on some earlier devices like the iPhone XR. The only real caveat there is that you can only use it on people, but I think you'll probably survive. Even the 4K video clips I shot look pretty good. I mean, none of them are gonna get the nod come awards season, but they're more than fine considering the price. Really, the only other knock aside from the portrait mode stuff is that the iPhone SE doesn't have a dedicated night mode. Apple wouldn't really explain to me why, but for now at least, that's going to remain exclusive to high-end iPhones. There is just one more thing I have to mention. The original iPhone SE, the one that launched over 4 years ago, got the iOS 13 update last year. That is 4 years of new software. Now, I like Samsung plenty, but even if you buy their most expensive smartphone right now, they will still only guarantee 2 years of software updates. Google's Pixels are a little bit better since they'll get at least 3 years worth of updates, but the point is, the iPhone SE will almost certainly get more than both of those devices. It is a bargain, sure, but it's a bargain that will continue to stay relevant for a long time. All told, the iPhone SE is a phenomenal smartphone for the price. And I know what some of you are thinking. Yes, there are handfuls of devices out there that cost more or less the same with bigger screens and more cameras and more flexibility and whatever. That's fine. The thing is, the iPhone SE tends to the basics so well that, practically speaking, hardly any of those other phones even come close. I'll grant you, it is not the prettiest device out there, and that will turn some people off, but if all you care about is getting an extremely powerful, extremely practical smartphone, the iPhone SE it's damn well perfect. I liked it, could you tell? Thank you for watching our iPhone SE review. I honestly wish more of it sucked so I didn't have to be so effusive with praise, but it just gets a lot right. And for the price, my God, this thing is going to sell like crazy. If you have feedback or want to know more about the iPhone SE, please check out the full written review on Engadget.com. Leave a comment below. And as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.